Hey everyone, welcome to From Woof to Wow. I am in Beijing. So I had quite an experience here so far working with some of the dog trainers, and I went to a couple pet resorts. All sorts of really cool, interesting things. Culture shock a little bit for sure. There's a lot of things that are different. I have to say, I'm considering as a Western trainer, at least I am so used to working with the customer, going to see them, let's say, an hour a week, working on certain issues or whatever it might be, and then they work on them, and I'm kind of like their coach. Versus here, there's been quite a few surprises on how the dog training works here. Apparently, you can even go to university to be a trainer here, as well as a groomer. So that's quite something. I'm going to talk a little bit about the things that are different, what impressed me, what I also think, even though it is part of the culture, some of the things I think that could maybe help as opposed to doing how they do things. So, kind of like mixing a little bit of the Western and Eastern into one, I guess, is what I'm learning from all of this experience. So, from the moment you get a dog here, apparently, they do board and train right away. So it's 4 weeks at a time. The trainers work primarily with the dog, not with the owners. The problem with this in where I'm from, for example, is I used to do this actually. For the record, I used to do this back in the day. Um, the reason why I don't is because of the relationship that you form with the dog, the bond that you form with the dog through the obedience and so on. Think of it like sending your kid to boarding school or something. It's kind of like that. So the moment you have your kid, boom, they're in this school for a month at a time. So, after the month, you could obviously take your dog back for a bit, then bring your dog back. But from what I'm gathering, it seems that it's kind of an ongoing thing. They work so much here that there's almost no time to do anything with their dog. So that's why the service, of course, is there. So it's at these really incredible facilities. I mean, one facility I was at, it had everything from big runs for parks, like a big park, of course, fenced in. They had a pool. They had, I think, 4 or 5 groomers going at once. It was quite incredible. It was called Noble Pet Resorts in Beijing. So that was really, really cool to see. I met some awesome people. On the first thing that you see when you walk in is you'll see the certificates of the handlers, the trainers, the groomers, and so on. Well, I thought that was really neat. People who are obviously going there, they can see right off the bat that they're dealing with professionals, or at least to the Beijing standards of what professionalism is. Compared to Montreal, it's such a gray area, right? I think, don't quote me on this, but I think legally you have to be certified here to be able to train. So that's really neat. Another thing to go along with that 4 weeks is they have homework, of course. So they have homework and they show the owner what they've done. Apparently, one of the hosts that I was communicating with, they told me that a lot of the trainers are very introverted. So they prefer to work with the dog as opposed to the customer, I guess, which is funny because there are definitely a lot of dog trainers like that in Montreal as well, hands down. Definitely not my line of business, the way I do things. It's quite the opposite for me in that sense. But still, really, really cool. You know what's interesting though is it works. It works here. And I'll explain my philosophy of why I think it works. In Montreal, dog training it's better, okay? It's better than it was, but I feel like it's still a luxury. I feel like dog training, people look at it like we can or we can't. Like we don't have to do it. We can save money and do it ourselves or blah blah blah. Versus here, it seems like the training is almost mandatory. Oh, and it's not by law or anything. I just mean the mindset that they have. So the mindset is like, we buy a dog, we board and train. It's in the budget. Because of that, if you think about it, this would probably make very well trained dogs if everyone had that mindset. Even though, yes, it's board and train as opposed to you doing it yourself, right? Which I love the idea. I mean, it's what I do, right? But I love being able to work with the customer and getting them to do the work. Being the opposite here, it was like right away, I was kind of like, oof, okay, I wonder how that works. But I started noticing in the cities, I'm mingling with all the locals, right? And all the dogs are off leash and they're so well behaved. They're right by the owners. They give them eye contact pretty much constantly. And there's no effort. Like what I mean by that is they're not there with treats or with, like focus, look at me, or they're not actively working the dog. The dog is just kind of doing it naturally. It's almost like what you would see in Montreal with a homeless person, to be honest with you. You see these homeless person in downtown Montreal, and the dog is just kind of there, right? Off lead, sitting there, just kind of chilling. It's kind of like that, but in a more domesticated version of it. They have homes, they're well fed, etc. It works because it's part of the plan when they get a dog. Versus in Montreal, where I'm from, it's kind of optional. It's like, oh, do we get a trainer? Oh, let's just do it ourselves. Let's start there, which is fine, right? I'm totally with that movement of YouTube is incredible, right? Online is incredible. The things you can learn is amazing. But if you think about it, what is the number one issue I have with customers? It usually comes down to consistency. So if you think about it, if I'm sending my dog and it's in the budget every month and then maybe 2 weeks off or whatever it is, I could see why the dogs are pretty much come to you fully trained. Because at some point, right, they're going to be just good at what they are continuously doing repetitively. I guess the only thing that kind of bugs me a bit is the relationship. Like, what type of relationship is being built there? I think for me, that is probably something that I can already think of a handful of peers of mine that would have trouble with that. But nonetheless, I think that there is room for this type of method in the context that it's a given, like this is what we do kind of thing. I think if there's a way to maybe orchestrate it where the customer is a little bit more involved, it would be great. But our mentality is so different. Think about it, right? 1 month at a time. But our mentality is like, I'll get phone calls and people will be like, can you take my dog for a week and get them to not attack people? Right? And it's like, my gosh, the people here are sending their dog for a month to teach the dog, sit. So think about that in the context of how often they're doing it with the dog and how much training the dog is actually getting. It's no wonder that when you walk the streets here and you see these dogs right by the owner, no leash, weaving through traffic, cars, people, whatever it is, they're just so in tune with the owner. And it's probably because of all this constant training methodology that they're doing with the board and train. So as far as, or at least I haven't met a trainer that actually does in-home here. Maybe they exist. I don't know. I obviously haven't met everyone in Beijing, but at least from what I'm gathering, it looks like the board and train is really what people are doing here. So that was really, really awesome. Also, just to say that I guess what I'm trying to say is that everything is normalized here in the sense of the board and train. So dogs get like full immersion. Oh, and that's the other thing that was really cool. It's not just a training. For that month, they are desensitized to grooming. They go in the pool. They go on walks. I mean, it is a complete boarding school type of program. Like I said, the only thing that is a little is like the relationship, right? So transferring that relationship to the owner can probably cause some kind of confusion when returning home. Or, of course, if they're not keeping up with the protocols and so on, the dogs maybe become a little less trained over time. But I have to admit, when you look at the math, and I'm all about math when it comes to this kind of stuff, even if my client was not consistent, but I have the dog 6 months out of the year, that dog is going to be pretty well trained, regardless of how consistent the owner is at home. I guess that's why, even though perhaps a lot of the dog owners I see around the street, the dogs are so well behaved, though, that if you think about it, that might be only half the capability of what the dog could be if the owner was also extremely consistent with their dog. And maybe they are, right? I mean, I'm learning here that in China, everyone works pretty hard. So you never know, right? I mean, that's what I've been gathering from all of this. I don't think that there's so much of like the culture in the sense of owning a dog. I don't know if it's the same as us in the sense of the emotional connection, like family member dynamic, because I think people would have a hard time leaving their dog with someone else for 6 months out of the year. And I'm just estimating here 6 months out of the year, because they said it's a month at a time. So it could even be much more. Unfortunately, I didn't ask what is the longest stay they've ever had, because that would be interesting to know. Oh, we have people that keep their dog here for a year at a time. That would be interesting to know if that's a thing. And at that point, I could already think about what some of you might be saying, which is, why own a dog if the dog is somewhere else for a year? I guess that just comes down to what I was saying. The emotional connection is different here. Owning a dog here might not necessarily be like owning a dog at home, where our dog is our baby. And not to say that all of us, I'm generalizing, okay? So I don't want you to think that I think everyone thinks their dogs are babies or vice versa. I'm just giving you a general emphasis on the situation. Yeah, it's just interesting. Compared to us, the structure, the discipline and the trust and authority really comes from the pet parent. Versus over here, it looks like the trainer has all the power because they're with the dog 24/7. And to transfer that, they have homework, and the person will come in and they will show the owner what they've done with the dog. And then it is up to them to continue doing it. And they even told me that usually they will not continue and they will just come back 2 weeks later, and then we'll do another month. Do you think that structure and love can coexist in that type of environment? I don't know. I don't even know how to look at that in that context. So I'd love to hear from some of you and let me know what you think. If I go back in the day when I was doing dog training and I was doing some board and train, it wasn't a repetitive thing. It was like, I take your dog for 5 weeks or 4 weeks, I work on XYZ, and then you get your dog back, and then you continue doing the work and so on. But it kind of ended there, right? Yeah, sure, maybe I get a call, like, can you take my dog for another week? So if you think about it, let's say the dog lives for 15 years, right? I'm possibly seeing your dog for not even 1/10 of their life, right? Versus here, it sounds like the dog trainer is always with your dog for quite some time, many, many years. Let's even say a quarter of the dog's life. Maybe less, maybe more, but compared to like 1/10, a slither, right, of what I would be doing with your dog if I were to do board and train. I know there are a few dog trainers in Montreal who do the board and train. But again, like I said, there's a guarantee attached to it, or something like, oh yeah, 5 weeks, I'll fix your problem kind of thing. And whatever, to each their own. I'm not talking negatively about it, but just to say that, like, they're marketing it like, okay, in these 5 weeks, we're going to work on this problem. And then there you go. Like, you can have your dog back. they're not trying to upsell another 5 weeks, right? Versus here, it's like, no, it's like, what do you mean? It's in our budget. Like we do it constantly. Like it's revolving. Like our dog is at the boarding school, 6 months out of the year. Or, oh, I have 2 week vacation off. I'm going to go pick up my dog for 2 weeks. Interesting, huh? I'd say. Anyhow, what I found really cool so far, again, it's not like I've met everyone, right? But what I've found so cool so far is that they seem very efficient, very disciplined, the dog trainers, very shy, but very just organized. It was really interesting to see the facility and just how organized they were and how friendly all the dogs were. The exposure and the socialization. I have a couple of pictures where I'm surrounded by all different breeds, and it was just really incredible to see. I think there was one dog that they said had some like resource guarding. And I got into a little bit with the resource guarding with them. And I was very amazed to know that the first things they started talking to me about was trust issues, teaching the owner not to trade with their dog, which is incredible because that's literally what we teach. Back in the day, we used to teach the opposite, but we know now for a fact that this can increase resource guarding issues because it's a trust issue, right? It's based out of fear. Well, that was really cool. I just found it very inspiring in some ways. I think the lack of owner education is probably the thing that could be improved on the most. Just because we work so hard on teaching the customer to do XYZ, I don't think that they do any of that, right? They, like I said, they have a little bit of homework, but from at least what they were telling me, the customers don't follow it, which tells me the way they're structuring it and so on is probably not fantastic. But still, if there was a way where we could put a law down to say, all right, if you buy a dog in Montreal for this amount of time, you need to send your dog to a school. I could see that possibly working in our favor. I know what a lot of you are thinking, and I'm just trying to keep an open mind. I'm looking at both sides. I'm not saying that is exactly how I would do it or whatever. I'm just trying to play both sides. Don't attack me, okay, in the comments here. If we had a thing where it was like, okay, anyone who buys a dog, they have to put their dog into training right away. I think that would be really cool. Actually, it could even be in the way we do it. Like when you buy a dog, you have to go to group classes, or when you buy a dog, you have to take one-on-one training. Um, Maybe even a government subsidized kind of program where the government pays a quarter of the fees or something. Where it's mandatory though, you have to do it. I think that somehow China has made it where it's not by law, but everyone does it. It just pumps out really good, well trained dogs. Pretty amazing. I'm loving this. So I would love to hear your insights on what you think about what I've learned so far with the board train here in China. Who knows? Maybe I'll open up a little place over here. I'll come back every 6 months or something, train some dogs for a few people. I would like to give it a try. Why not? Anyhow, I am exploring and doing tons of things over here in China. This will probably be one of quite a few podcasts that has to do with China because, to be honest with you, I don't think I'll be able to stop talking about it because it is so damn interesting over here. So, yeah, I will talk to you soon and thank you for listening. From Woof to Wow, this is Josh, and please don't be shy to like and share. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. All right? Have a good one. 再见. That means bye.